Alright guys, so we're sitting down the first game here with our colorless post deck. Opening hand's pretty good. We do have 3 lands available to us. Unfortunately, 2 of those are glimmer posts, and those are something you usually want to hang on to until later on in the game. So that's a little disappointing, but we still got some good plays. We get 2 of the replicas, which is great. That'll give us some draw options later on, and a turn 1 play with the spell bomb. So things get better. We top deck into Expedition Map on our first draw. This means on turn 2 we can sacrifice that for a Cloud Post. Also get a Pyrite Spellbomb, which is great because we do have our red mana available to us, but didn't get a land, so we're going to have to put that Glimmer Post into play and use that to fetch out a Cloud Post. It's going to be great. We really need to get that mana going as fast as possible, especially in a deck like this. So, opponent starts out with the Ripper here. He was running a mono red vampires deck, which is very cool, but I am going to be at least able to take this out. Because it's so aggro focused, we're going to be pretty well off because of the Glimmer Post and the life gain that gives us. Not a lot of control options in this deck, but that's okay because we can at least, at the very least, get this Pyrite Spellbomb. We're going to be able to put that into play on this turn and use the ability to kill off that guy. Thankfully, the Ripper only starts with a 1 toughness. So when he does that first haste damage, he's only going to be at 2 toughness, and that's well within the range of our Spellbomb. So his next play is going to be the Crossway Vampire, and it's the one that doesn't let you block when it comes into play. Very good. I had a lot of fun with that and came to drafting. Excuse me, but because I have no creatures in play, he's going to simply be able to just put it through. Draw into another Expedition Map, which we're going to use right away. Because like I said, you really, especially with this kind of this oddball deck, you want to get as many cards drawn and as much mana as possible. So we're going to now put that Cloud Post into play and get that other Spell Bomb down. Things are really good tier 2 because we do get a Vault of Whispers, which is thankfully going to get us this replica. They are really great, but if you do not find that black mana, you're a little screwed, so you really need to find yourself a Prism or a Vault of Whispers to get that going. So things get even tougher now. My opponent puts down Lightning Talons that does turn this guy into a 6/2 first striker. Very tough to deal with, but we do have an ability for some life gain here, and it's still within the range of our Pirate spell if we can find more. So swings through. I mean, things are not bad at all because of the fact that we still have 2 Glimmer Posts in hand. Gonna put the replica down first because this is something that I can use to chump block and then sacrifice. That means I will not be taking the 6 damage, and I'm also using the card draw that I wanted anyways, but it does mean that at this point in time I need to make sure that Vault of Whispers is in play so that I can get that going as soon as possible. So off the 3 mana on our untapped Cloud Post, I made the play with the Navigator. That gives me an option to chump block if he gets another Haste Ripper. It gives me an option to chump block there, plus we want it in play if we can find ourselves a Wellspring. So he does make a play here. It is going to be the Heirs of Stromkirk. Anyways, it's that Intimidate 2/2 that does get bigger as the game progresses, as it does damage. Unfortunately for him, that Intimidate ability is not going to be so great. He does swing through, and like I said, I am going to chump block with the replica, and then before it dies, I am going to, combat damage step, I am going to sacrifice it on its ability to draw 2 cards. Things get great here. We're drawing to yet another bobble. These are great. The first one obviously going to probably use on and get into the third. Forgot about that. So Glimmer Post comes down. Obviously going to keep us in this game. We're going to start out. We're going to use a bauble, and we're going to start by returning a. Let's get that down. We're going to use it to return the Pyrite Spellbomb. That's going to be very important to us because, like I said, these 2 creatures are going to be in range. This guy could get out of hand very fast, so we need to get those Spellbombs back in the deck as soon as possible. And now what I like to do, because I have 2 more of these are basically going to act as 1 mana card draw. I'm going to use the first one to return the Spellbomb, the second one to return the first one, and then the third one to return the second one. So I end up with 1 bauble in the graveyard. The Wellspring as well is a fantastic thing to draw into. And I did get into a Crusher here. The Spellbomb's going to go down. This is great. The Aether Spellbomb is something that can work really well. It's going to give me a chance to remove this enchantment, which is definitely going to be troublesome. This guy by himself is just a 3/2 and not that much that we have to worry about. But I need to find that blue mana. You see, I've got everything here but blue, so I need to find a Prism or the Seed of the Synod in order to bounce that and get the opportunity to return that to his hand and remove the enchantment at the very least. So he does use stun. It's going to mean my replica can't block, and I was going to use that to chump block and then draw cards, but since I can't do that, I might as well just draw the cards off it now. Get into my 4th Glimmer Post, so definitely got a lucky draw in this game, and even better, we get the Prophetic Prism. So that's going to go down. He is going to have the chance to attack through here. He does use Vampiric Fury to pump these guys up, so now we are facing an 8-2 first strike and a 4-2 first strike that will get bigger when it does damage, so definitely a pretty good draw by my opponent. He's got a really interesting deck. I definitely like that. Going to obviously chump block on the bigger of the 2 creatures. This does mean that his heirs are going to get bigger. A little bit troublesome because of the fact that it is now out of range of our Pirate Spellbomb, but we can still use the Aether Spellbombs and stuff to handle that. More importantly, I really want to get this Crusher into play. Gonna have to put down Glimmer Posts on these consecutive turns in order to gain some life and keep myself in this game. Drawing cards here, trying to find not a direct answer, but anything else. I really wanted to, you see here, use the Spellbomb. This is going to prevent me from blocking on the following turn, but at the very least, I mean, this is going to get bigger, but at the very least it does prevent that extra damage. Would have been 6 off the enchanted creature, so having that Summoning Sickness and getting it back to my opponent's hand isn't as good as, a direct kill spell, but it's what we have to work with. So we are now going to make sure we get this Crusher into play. A lot of times the Crusher is so big and scary that it will kind of force some players to start misplaying, and they'll just focus in entirely on the Crusher and, okay, how do I get around this? How do I deal with this specific card? Meanwhile, they're not paying attention to smaller interactions, and it can really cost some people the game. Not necessarily saying this is my opponent, but newer players tend to fall into this trap more often than not. They will even sometimes see the Crusher and just hands down concede the game. So he is, like I said, going to put that Vampire back. It prevents my Crusher from blocking, but that's okay. Probably wouldn't have been able to anyways because of the Intimidate ability, but anyways, we did get another Navigator, which is great because we do have this Wellspring in play. I swing through here. He is going to sacrifice off 2 of his mountains and take 8 damage. So now we're going to start getting the draw going. You see the benefits at this point in time of having all this extra mana. Each of my Cloud Posts is tapping for 6. So for 3 I can put this Thermal Navigator into play. I'm going to immediately use its ability to sacrifice off the Wellspring and see what I draw into. Things get great for me here. I hit into another Wellspring, which I can put into play without even having to tap another land. Still carrying 1 mana, and going to sacrifice that again to the Navigator's ability. Finally draw into our Golem Foundry, which is something that we really wanted earlier on. That would have worked so fantastic when we were playing those baubles and using the baubles to return baubles. So the first thing you want to do here is make sure that you get this Foundry into play, so that when you put this Prism down on the next turn, or not the next turn, but the next play, you get that token. Whenever you finally get into the Foundry, you want it to be kind of the next thing you play, because so much of this deck is based on artifacts. You want to make sure the triggers start going as fast as possible, because you need to get those 3 counters. So Prism comes down, gives us an opportunity for yet another card draw, and we get into yet another Prism. So we take our 2 mana that is carrying over, and we get that down, and now our Foundry is already up to 2 counters, and get into another Crusher. Now we're a little short on being able to do this. We only have 5 mana available to us, so we cannot get that into play yet. Make kind of an odd move here. I sacrificed a Prism to the Navigator. I don't know. You ever have those moments? I thought it was a Wellspring. So you just have these moments where you make a play like that, and it's not really going to hurt you, but it just makes you look stupid. Yeah, that was one of those. So now my opponent's turn. He does have the 4/4. I am going to be able to, at the very least, chump block that. He decided not to attack with the Crossway because it would have traded, but I am going to still chump block the heirs to keep them at 4/4. They are big, they are powerful, but I am going to be able to put down this additional Glimmer Post here. Going to get my life back up. You see, we're almost at that point where putting down a Glimmer Post gets us 8 mana. The Spell Bomb is going to come down next. That's going to give us the 3rd counter on the Foundry. And because we have the black mana available to us, we're going to be able to draw a card after removing our opponent's graveyard. He does concede here. We did, like I said as well, get the extra mana for the Crusher. And now you're sitting in a game where you have 1 card in hand, you're facing down 2 Ulamog's Crushers. Things are not good. Even though this guy is getting bigger and out of hand, I do have the Golem Foundry, which is starting to generate tokens. That 3/3 Golem will be able to chump block because of the Intimidate ability. It can still do it. So there you go. It's the first game with us. This is a great interaction, though you really, really wish you can find these foundries earlier than possible. The key thing to note from this game, focus on the cloud posts and getting that early mana fast. Alright guys, so this is the second game that we came across with our colorless deck. Opening hand was definitely not good, only had one land available to us, and there's no instance where you would keep a one land hand. I don't care what anyone says about playing cloud posts, or post decks in general, but that is not something you want to do. So, drop down to 6 cards. Hand's a little bit better. We do have a cloud post we can start off. The furnace is great too. Bauble will be early, and we have a foundry, which is nice. So there's some potential to this hand, and we're on the draw. So things aren't so bad. We're not going to be that far behind as far as card count goes. Now things get better with Glimmer Post. It means our cloud post, when it untaps, will be worth 2 mana on the next turn, as long as we play the Glimmer Post. Keep that key point in mind. Now my opponent starts off with a Crew-In Striker. Really cool card that I have been thinking of building something around and have not had the chance to yet. Now, here's where I was talking about. So, my play here, I tap the Cloud Post to play Conjurer's Bubble. This means that my play will be Great Furnace, as far as lands go. Now, think back 2 seconds ago. What did I just say the right move is here? Well, on your second turn, Cloud Post untaps, you play Glimmer Post. That way you would have 3 mana available. I could tap out and play Golem Foundry on turn 2. That is the ideal play. This is a horrible play. Playing the Foundry on turn 2 would mean on turn 3 we would have the mana available to play 2 artifacts. We would play one of our replicas, probably this one because of the fact that our opponent is an aggro strategy and the Bauble, and our Golem Foundry would be at 2 counters. And then on turn 3 would have been that. Turn 4 you would have had enough counters on the Golem Foundry in order to make your first Golem token. That's how it should have been. This was actually a significant misplay for 2 reasons. One, your opponent is playing a fast deck, and while we already struggle with fast decks, making a misplay like this doesn't make things any better. And 2, it's just so bad. It's frustrating. I knew as soon as I did it that I had made the wrong play, and there was nothing I could do about it. So that's alright. Next comes down is an interesting card, the Hissing... God, I'm not even going to say it. Iguanar? Yeah, sure. This is a nice card. I've used it in Lizard Tribal. Kind of an interesting creature just because of the fact that my opponent is running these strikers, and I really don't understand the interaction with those, but I guess because of the fact that these only get an increase in power and have that 1 toughness, they're going to be dying pretty often. So the trample ability is nice, but they're going to die, so I guess having the Iguana there as a trigger is going to help do that extra fast damage. So continue to make poor plays here. I now put down the Seat of the Synod to play the Foundry. Really wouldn't have made much difference because even if we did put down Glimmer Post, we still would not have mana available to make 2 plays in 1 turn. We would still only be able to play the Golem Foundry. But you see what I'm saying? This is the Golem Foundry. At this point in time, we're in turn 3. If I had done this correctly, by turn 3, our Foundry would have been in play with a replica and 2 counters. Because I did this wrong, we are now in turn 3. We have the Foundry in play, no replica, no counters. Very, very bad mistake. You know, I talk about minor mistakes versus big mistakes all the time, and I occasionally am not, I'm not these, like, pro tour players, so I occasionally make these little slip-ups that, sure, I could have made a better move, but the move I made is not going to cost me the game. This is a move that I may still have lost this game, spoiler alert, but I may have still lost this game, but in doing this, I gave myself very, very little chance. You see, he puts down another striker, which means he is going to be hitting me for 6 off the lizard and the other striker. Then he plays a Marauder. It's going to do 1 damage off that and make those each 4/1 creatures. So, bad, bad, bad. Oh, I'm sorry, it makes this one a 3/1 because of that, but because it doesn't have haste, we don't have to worry about that. We're still going to take 7 damage off the top, and next turn we're going to have to block all 4 of these creatures, in addition to whatever additional power they gain off of future creature placement, as well as the damage from anything dying if we choose to block with these replicas. It's just a really bad situation. We have the Bauble in play, but we have nothing in the graveyard to use it on. Now you can use this by itself because you sacrifice it. before the rest of it goes, so you can sacrifice it and get that card draw, but it really just, it doesn't matter at this point in time. Now I finally have that Glimmer Post into play, brings my life up a little bit, and I can put down the Prism. I don't know what I was searching for with the Prism. This game was pretty much over off that early misplay. You see now, here we are. This is turn 4. We should have had a replica in play as well as a golem counter, a golem token. Now you see here we are turn 4. We're just getting our very first counter on this foundry, so it's definitely, I think this is a very important game. I'm glad it kind of worked out this way because it shows the importance of playing these cards in order. I talked about in the first game that as soon as you get that foundry, you want to put that into play first, and this is why. So we do draw a card off the Prism. We are going to put down a replica here. We go with the blue one because of the fact that it is a 1/4, and it gives me a little bit more options as far as blocking some of these bigger 3 attack power creatures. In the end, it's probably not going to matter, but you do what you have to. So now comes down the War Marshal, which is, I guess, a much better interaction with these strikers because of the fact that he doesn't pay the Echo. It creates another creature, and it creates another opportunity for this to get bigger. So it creates the token. He's going to get 4 stacks from this. They go up to 4/1 tramplers each. And now I have to block way more damage than I have really available to me. Gonna have to use the replica to block a striker. This is great because it prevents 4 damage. It's getting one of the strikers off the board, but at the same time, you know, this iguana here is going to cause me to lose 2 life because 2 creatures have died, and this puts me down to 2. So at this point in the game, I'm thinking, crap, this is pretty much over, but at the very least, the Marauder's going to die, it's going to be gone, I'm going to take 1 damage. I'm thinking, okay, I have enough mana to put 2 replicas into play and a Golem Foundry token. If he kills off the War Marshal to give this trample, then it's a little bit more troublesome, but I should still have enough to block because the new token would have Summoning Sickness. So I'm thinking, okay, I can probably stall for 1 more turn and try and find at least another Glimmer Post, or maybe one of the spell bombs to gain the 5 life and just hold things off. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out that way. My opponent does have in the last card in his hand a Brimstone Volley. So very, very fast game, and I think this helps illustrate kind of this thing that I'm realizing is that this deck is definitely struggling against anything that's really, really fast. I mean, you look at this, this will tell us in a minute, I believe turn 5 that this ended. Yeah, turn 5 that this all ended. So, you know, I did decently, and this is just, it's so frustrating. Had I played this Golem Foundry correctly, this game would have progressed a little longer, and I would have been in a much better position to not necessarily win, but not lose. It would have allowed me to stall, which is the ideal thing for post decks. Alright guys, and this is the 3rd game that I sat down to with my colorless post deck. So opening hand is really great. We have 4 lands available to us. That's usually a little bit heavy, but this is an opportunity where we have 2 of our lands as cloud posts and Glimmer Post as well. Now we have Prism for drawing cards, a Spell Bomb, a Pyrite type Spell Bomb that will give us an option for maybe some creature kill later on. So, gonna get things started here. Opponent's gonna start off with the Mountain. Seeing a lot of red today. Now things get even better here. We have Golem Foundry on our first draw. This is something that I just played the game and screwed this up. Now this time, if you watch, I've learned from my mistake and I will not make the same mistake twice. Now my opponent puts down a Plains and I assumed, okay, maybe he's doing the Boros thing. Maybe we're going to see a plated GOP, some landfall. Didn't happen. So, now if you just saw us a couple seconds ago in the game I did before this, this is kind of great because I made this mistake in the last game and I did not get this Foundry in on turn 2. This time I had an opportunity again where I could get a turn 2 Golem Foundry, and this time I did it correctly. I remembered what happened, I put the Glimmer Post down, and I got that Foundry into play. You know, it's okay to make mistakes, but I think the most important thing that you have to get from making mistakes is learning from them, understanding where you went wrong, and then correcting it in games afterwards. So here you see I definitely had that opportunity. I got that Foundry in on turn 2. That means on turn 3 I can put things out like the Prism, I can play the Spell Bombs, and I will be able to start getting those counters going as soon as possible. Turn 2 is going to be the earliest opportunity you have available to you to get this Foundry into play. So that usually means that you can't get anything going till turn 3, but you keep that in mind. That is the earliest opportunity, and every time it comes up, you want to go for it. My opponent makes kind of an interesting play here, puts out Banalish Veteran. It's going to get bigger. It's a temporary, it's an end of turn pump effect, but I'm still going to use this opportunity to get rid of it as soon as possible. So in order to do that, I have to use my Spell Bomb. I have to have red mana, and since I do not have that directly, I need to start off with the Prism. And then I'm going to play my non-Cloudpost land, any of them will do, and siphon one of those into the Prism, into the red mana, into killing that guy. So now you see I'm in a much better position. Here's turn 3. I have 2 counters on my Golem Foundry. I have plenty of mana available to me. I've got the Cloudposts. I have an opportunity to change my colors, even though I've got pretty much all of my colors spaced. And the Foundry is just 1 away. I mean, next turn I can play the Spell Bomb, I can play the Navigator, I can play both of those next turn because of these Cloudposts, and I'm going to get that 3rd counter on the Foundry in order to get my first Golem token. Next comes out the Lightning Elemental, so clearly my opponent was doing some kind of 3-colored aggro, looking for a bit of a fast play here. Starting off with the Cloudpost because I wanted to get that 3 mana off the 1 tapped land in order to get this Navigator. Not a big deal because I have other mana available to me, but being able to tap only 1 land to put this into play means that I have 2 mana available that I can put down the Spell Bomb, and I have 1 open if I want to use it for the sacrifice abilities. The Prism will give us that opportunity to find the blue mana we need. Now, whenever you get these 3 counters on the Foundry, what you want to be able to do is wait until your opponent's end of turn. After you have 3, wait till your opponent's end of turn so that that creature will come into play, and then on your following turn you can attack. Now you can also do this, you don't have to wait till end of turn. You see here I wanted to use it as a blocking ability. I think the better play here is what I did. You want to use this Golem to block the Lightning Elemental, if you want to block the Lightning Elemental, as opposed to the Navigator, because the Navigator, while it's smaller, what you're going to want it for later on is, this is your only outlet for getting rid of those Wellsprings. So if you don't have these Navigators, you can't sacrifice those Wellsprings, which means you're only going to be able to draw 1 card off of them, which is not good at all. So that's why I wanted to use this token. Yes, it is the bigger creature, but it is going to at the same time leave my Navigator available to me for later play. When you're playing post decks, you have to really focus on the late game. Is it post? If you've ever put any time or effort into playing that, or seen it in competitive events, they really go through this whole aspect of stalling for time, and I cannot stress this enough. Glimmer Post, gaining life, killing things with Lightning Bolt, Flame Slash, stall for time. And then they sit there and they draw and they draw and they draw. That deck is entirely made to play for the mid to late game, and this is kind of what we were doing here. By not using that Navigator to block the Elemental, instead of, the Golem, what we've done is we're setting ourselves up for the late game where we want to draw more cards. You want to play for an early game, you block with the Navigator and you leave the bigger creature on the field, but this is not that type of deck. So, it's something you have to be aware of. Now my opponent puts down Llanowar Elf. The Llanowar Elf is not going to be a big problem here. Blinding Mage, also not a huge problem. The tap ability will become a little bit troublesome later on, I guess, if we do get that Crusher into play. But we're setting ourselves up in a situation here where we have a lot of opportunities to get these tokens going fast. If you can get that turn 2 Foundry in, then you are golden. If your opponent cannot remove it, if it stays on the field, you will be starting to generate so many 3/3 tokens that you will be so set with this deck. You really will. If he's got a lot of kill, a lot of control, maybe you're going to be a little slow. You may get yourself down to that point in time where you've almost drawn out your deck, but you just have a lot of potential here. So I had been holding on to this Aether Spellbomb for a while here. I wanted to be able to use the ability. I had the Prism. I was going to be able to do the blue mana. You see I drew a Seed of the Synod too. So I was holding on to it, but I realized, okay, here's what my opponent's playing with. It's a bunch of M12 creatures, and this is no shot at my opponent, but that tells me that this deck is a much more casual deck. It's probably a little less scary, and there's not as many bombs that I need to worry about. So I instead decided I think it's going to be a stronger move here to sacrifice that and draw the card. This opens up opportunities for me to get things like the Replica here, just any other artifacts that I may be able to play in addition to the Foundry. So that's going to come into play, and I'm thinking at this point in time probably not a lot of opportunities to sacrifice this for its ability, but it's okay. We still get that 1/3 body onto the field. I am attacking now with the Navigator. I figured worst case scenario, he blocks with both of his creatures and the Navigator dies, but I have another one available to me for when I find Wellsprings, and what this would allow me to do is give me an opportunity to kill the Blinding Mage, which could be trouble later on. It's not something that's absolutely going to cause me issues, but having that one opportunity available to kill this is a deck where a lot of our options for creature control are going to come through combat. Tricks like, jumping tokens off the Foundry to block with, and stuff like this, where we try and get our opponent to block so we can, kill off a creature we want to. Other than that, our only option is the Spellbomb. The Pyrite Spellbomb is only going to do 2 damage. It's only a shock ability, so that 2 damage also, more times than not, is going to be used in an attempt to finish combat damage. Say you've done all but 1 damage needed to kill off a creature, then you can use the Spellbomb to finish them. The Aether Spellbomb is also creature control, but it's only temporary. It's like a boomerang, it's going to come back. So we wanted to be careful. You want to be very smart about how you deal with combat and assigning damage. So now things are going to slow down big time. My opponent puts out the Blight Widow, which is, oddly enough, I think the second time I've seen this today. I don't know if that was playing this deck or I've recorded a couple of earlier videos, but it is a 2/4 Infect Reach, which is going to slow these down. I can no longer use this ability. You get this point in time in the mid-game where you have all these extra artifact lands and stuff that you do not need, and you can start sacrificing random lands or extra prisms in order to get these navigators flying. The prisms can be sacrificed most of the time because of the fact that you get, if you get to a point in time where you have all of the colors, you look here, I have 4 out of 5 colors. I don't really need it. This whole deck is colorless. The real important part of these prisms is that draw 1 ability. They do give you an early opportunity to find colors you need. As you see, earlier you needed it for the Spellbomb. That's great, but when you get to that mid to late game, they're really useless to you, so you can easily sacrifice those to give yourself a flying on the navigators. But because this guy has reach, it's going to keep me from being able to attack even through the air. This is more troublesome because of the fact that it's got that 4 toughness. That means even though I'm going to be creating these 3/3 golems, it's going to be hard for them to get into play. Get the damage through. Just be a presence on the board, because he can block them. They won't kill the Blight Widow, and at the same time, my token goes down to a 1/1 because of the Infect ability. So we're going to stall out the game for a while until we start generating several tokens, and that's going to be really easy for us now as we get our second Foundry. This is great, and we're also at kind of an interesting point where the first the first counter on this initial Foundry is going to be generated by this one. That means they're going to be a step behind each other. So this is great. We're going to get this Foundry into play, and as soon as you start reaching that point in the game where you have 2, 3, or 4 Foundries, then you're in a position where you're going to be generating significant amount of tokens, and you want to start looking to draw as many cards as possible. Things like these spell bombs, it's going to be more important to you to use an Aether Spellbomb to draw cards in a situation where you have multiple Foundries, because you'll be able to draw them and find more important things like maybe a replica or other options to draw cards. If you can start using them to get stuff like Wellsprings and all these really cheap draw artifacts, you can be using the ArtPost to generate that mana to draw just card after card after card and make so many tokens that your opponent cannot handle it. Most of these games will come down to the tokens. They're really going to be your heavy win condition in this scenario. So opponent puts down a quarter shield, and this gives creatures 0/3. Now I'm going to do the typical thing here. I'm going to wait until he spends the mana needed. He needs 3 mana to equip it. So I'm going to wait until he spends that 3 mana before I use the replica to kill it. Now you might think, well, this is kind of a useless artifact. Why are you wasting a creature? And the reason is that this guy at a 2/4 is tough to deal with because I can't get through that 4 toughness. So if all of a sudden I let him become a 2/7, he's going to be that much harder to deal with. On the other hand, if he puts this shield on any of his other creatures, all of a sudden now he has another creature with 4 toughness, and it's going to be hard to get through that creature. You have to keep in mind that these golems only have 3 attack, and we have no way to really pump them up. So that was actually a really good play to get rid of that, because it's going to just allow us to beat this opponent faster. So things get even slower here because of the fact that I am drawing just lands. My opponent is going to make a couple interesting attempts to tap creatures, but because he doesn't actually attack, they're really kind of wasted. Next out is the Alien and Sky Hunter. This is okay because I do have opportunities, we're in that mid game. If I need to block, I have 2 navigators. That means I can throw away one of them and still have one available for Wellsprings. And I have things to get rid of, like this prism or all this extra land. So I don't have to worry too much. If he decides to finally attack with the Sky Hunter, I'll be okay with sacrificing these. If it even comes down to it and your opponent's running a lot of flying, you can start sacrificing golems. You really just, if you find yourself in that situation, don't be afraid. So draw into the bauble, this is great. I am going to tap out a Cloud Post in order to play it, because I'm hoping that whatever I draw off this ability is going to be able to play for more counters on these golems, golem foundries. So the bauble's going to come down. I am going to use it to return the Pyrite Spellbomb. I think that's going to be your go-to card most of the times, is the Pyrite Spellbomb if it's in your graveyard. The next thing I will go for is if you have other baubles. So if I have a bauble in the graveyard, I will use another one to return. And you saw in game 1 where I used 3 in a row to return baubles. So it's definitely, that would be the first thing, is use the Conjurer bauble to return Conjurer's bauble. And then the second thing would be something like a Pyrite Spellbomb, or either you can use it for Aether Spellbomb if you have things like artifacts or enchantments that you need to be removing as well. So opponent is going to take his turn here, still not going to be attacking through, not tapping anything either. So I finally draw into a Wellspring, which is great, because I have options to sacrifice it. I'm going to put it down. That does make this this Golem Foundry full of counters, and at the same time we're drawing a card. Now I am going to play the Prophetic Prism, and you'll notice here I am not going to sacrifice the Wellspring. Why am I doing that? Well, there's a couple reasons. One, I really am in a pretty drawn out, even position here. The Prism is a more important thing to get into play because of the fact that they're going to trigger the Foundries. If you sacrifice this, you're going to draw a card, and maybe you'll have a chance of playing an artifact off that draw. But we already have an artifact in our hands, so let's get that into play first. The second reason is the fact that I am probably going to be using these navigators defensively. I had just said that if he decides to attack with the Sky Hunter, I want to be able to block with one of these. Now, I could use one of those and sacrifice a Prism, no problem at this point in the game, but if I have a Wellspring, why not use that? Save it until a later point in time where it may be more necessary. So off the Prophetic Prism, I draw into my third Golem Foundry, and this is fantastic. It is going to bump these up, so both of these are now able to produce golem counters, or golem tokens for me, which is great. We're going to wait till the end of my opponent's turn here. So taps 4, puts down another lightning elemental, but is going to pass his turn yet again. And a turn, we're going to make our 2 golems, and now we draw Expedition Map, which is great. We have actually, if you'll notice here, it's really cool again, we have 3 foundries, and they're all at different points. They're all a counter behind each other. That means every turn, as long as we continue to play artifacts, we're probably going to be able to put out a token. You see, this one here is at 2 counters. This one is at 1. This one here is at 0. So when we play this artifact, you go 3 to 2 to 1. So you'll be able to take the counters off there. Now you have 2, 1, 0. You play another artifact. This goes up to 1, this goes up to 3, this goes up to 2. And because they're stacked that way, for the next couple of turns you'll be able to put out a golem token every turn as long as you're putting another artifact into play. Kind of an important thing, and I do mention this in the building and all. Remember that the Golem Foundries, it has to be an artifact spell you play. These artifact lands are not going to trigger it. Just a side note, and roll in your eyes, I can hear it, but going to use that Expedition Map to fetch out a Cloud Post. Here you're in a situation where you could get a Glimmer Post. We're at 18 life, the game is stalled. I think it's more important to grab the Cloud Post and generate that mana later on, and save the Glimmer Posts for a point in time where you may need them more. Cloud Posts and Glimmer Posts at this point in the game aren't going to make a difference no matter what it is. So get the Cloud Post, it comes into play tap, this way you're at least giving yourself a faster opportunity to get that mana available to you. It also works out that, you get these Glimmer Posts later in the game, they get more life with more Cloud Posts, so it makes sense, get the Cloud Posts first, and then you can, use the Glimmer Posts and gain more life. So things continue to stall. My opponent puts out now a Greater Basilisk, which is a 3/5 and going to be all kinds of trouble. But I am going to use this Golem Foundry to get my 4th Golem token. And now you're at a point in time. I drew a Pyrite Spellbomb here, but even without that, you're at a point in time where you can start attacking and clearing out creatures. He will be able to block off, 2 of them, kill them off with the Blight Widow. or at least shrink them. He has opportunities now to start killing off your golems by blocking, but at the same time it's going to start clearing his board, and we're at a situation with 3 golem foundries active on our board that we can start generating a significant amount of tokens and really getting through. And the fact that I drew the Pyrite Spellbomb makes this all the better. It's going to, of course, activate all my foundries, but at the same time, when I attack through with these 3, and he blocks with his Basilisk and or Blight Widow, it gives me 2 opportunities to finish them off. It's going to have 3 damage on each of these, which means the Widow will only need 1 damage to finish it, and the Greater Basilisk will only need 2 damage. Both of those are covered under our Pyrite Spellbomb. So he kills them off. You see here, this one is now a 1-1 because of the infectability. I did get through some damage at the very least, and now I'm going to activate the Pyrite Spellbomb, and I'm going to use it to kill off this Blight Widow. I feel this is the stronger creature. I understand that this will cause more problems later on if we get to Crusher level because of the Death Touch, but at the same time, I really wanted to get rid of this because of the Reach ability. That'll give me more opportunities to attack through with these guys as they fly. Also, the Infect ability is worse. It's going to, start shrinking these golems, and having a 1-1 golem token, not scary. Doesn't really help me out. I realize that the Basilisk will kill the golems, but the 1-1 token is just going to be eaten by stuff like the Blinding Mage, so it's just useless. It might be considered dead anyway. Another interesting tap from my opponent, because I do believe he concedes here. I guess he was hoping to draw into something here and attack through with my only 1 blocker. At this point in time, I think the game was pretty well in hand. I was okay with going back and forth. Like I said, I'm at this point in time having 3 Golem Foundries active on the field that I can start generating tokens on a significant pace and be putting in almost a 3/3 creature every turn. By attacking through and getting stuff back like these spell bombs, it gives me opportunities to really capitalize on combat and find opportunities to kill off some of these guys. Say I didn't attack next turn because of this 3/3 death or 3/5 death touch, I'm fine still. I can sit here and stall for time until I draw out a Crusher. The Crusher could be like your big bomb finisher. The Foundries are going to really be winning you most games, but if you reach these stall situations, the real big thing here is going to be finding a Crusher, because that will make him sacrifice 2 permanents. Most likely lands, but you never know. And at the same time, he's going to have to deal with an 8/8 body that he has to either chump block or deal with in other ways. So, we were at a good position here where we could have easily just stalled for time, waited until we found a Crusher, or until we got enough Golem tokens, and he blocked poorly enough that it gave us opportunities to get through and just finish this game off.